TikTok rewards premium content. TikTok rewards a really, really good video. It doesn't really have to be like a meme or like super humorous anymore.
UTA's Felipe Mendez and I talk about what it's like to be a cultural anthropologist and look into the very vast and varied niches that exist in culture.
So I think a lot of our job with TikTok and kind of with anything we're posting out is how do we advance and how do we push forward those systems or kind of reinvent the wheel. They say don't reinvent the wheel, don't fix what's not broken, but I mean, like, let's fix it. It's a new thing. We're working on a different thing, and we can't keep treating it like it's the same thing that it's always been. So really, with that principle, we say, hey, how can we always evolve? How can we be on the next thing, and also not only just be on the next thing, but scale the next thing and be able to really empower that.
It kind of depends on where you're at in the system. Are you brand? Are you agency? Are you talent? Wherever you are, because somebody might come to me and say, well, I need to make sure that everything is measured and trackable. And if you're like an agency person, you're like, I have to be super disruptive. So when you say that, like, it completely computes, because it's like, yeah, but if you do the exact same thing over and over again, it becomes mid and it becomes sus and nobody's going to pay attention to it. So it's almost like
agree.
My best example is, and I've used examples like this before, but whether it's those lookalike contests or the guy that was eating a rotisserie chicken in Philadelphia, it got people's attention, but you got to be infinitely better if you're going to use that tactic versus if you do something new.
Completely agree. And it's funny that you mentioned that. The person who did the first lookalike contest, Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest, a good friend of mine, Anthpo. He's incredible.
Nice.
A very, very creative mind. We can get more into him after. But I mean, yeah, I completely agree. And I think a lot of my job being on the agency side, working with these brands, is being disruptive and it being that part of, like, sometimes you love to preach, you like to sell and be like, hey, I'm the best person for this job. But the formula that we've really built is around saying, like, hey, I might not be the best person for the job, but I know damn well I can get the best person in the job in the room, because I'll talk to this person, talk to this fan, talk to this creator who's really tapped in and directly tied into what you are selling, or kind of they are the direct consumer, where they're eloquent and they can speak to it and they can tell you what they want. Whereas I think as marketers, a lot of times we get stuck into this space of like, oh, we're not set up for success because people don't want to be marketed to. We'll always be the brand in the room. But I mean, with everything that we've built with Lionsgate or any other clients, we've actually seen the opposite. The comments are as if I paid for them. They're like, this is marketing. Oh my God, give this person a raise, because they feel heard, they feel spoken to. And I think if you have that as the principle on your marketing messages, and fans will be really, really receptive to that, and they understand that you got your job. Just make sure that you're doing it really, really well.
Well, and the other thing too is just the nature of content, right? So, like, we started the discussion on TikTok, and it's important. It's like there are moments of monoculture. They're few and far between. Everybody's kind of niched out, and so it's impossible for anyone to go into 10 different rooms and be like, I'm the right person for this.
Exactly.
No, you have to you have to kind of almost stand on your cultural anthropology and say, like, I will be able to find it. I think there's a lot of respect.
You worded that perfectly.
Yes, I think there's a lot of respect in being able, and this is a point that everybody gets to at some point in their career, hopefully sooner than later, and I definitely get, like, for me, in my early 20s, it was like, I need to prove to you that I know everything. And then eventually I was like, I need to prove to you that I can find someone who knows the right things.
And be honest with myself when I'm the wrong person, saying, like, hey, you should really hit somebody else up for this.
Yeah, because they're going to discover it one way or another, right? It's like, I'm not going to walk into somebody and be like, I am the foremost expert on K-pop Demon Hunters. Exactly. They're going to know. They're going to know.
Where I stand is I'm obsessed with content. And that takes many shapes and forms, but the baseline content always has to be attached to some message and some larger cultural moment around that. So it's around connecting those dots, right? It's like, I got the content piece of it. I know what makes a good video and how we can continue to make good videos. And those processes, how do we make sure that the room that we've built to work on anything that we have is the most effective possible?
Yeah, your reps, your muscle memory is in curation and being able to connect people. And I think that's honestly sometimes also kind of understanding where you are, who you're working for, and what the that's, again, why would somebody want to engage with you? That's the reason. They're like, we come to you because we think that you're going to be the foremost person to be able to figure out and connect those dots.
Exactly.
I think that's the big thing. I also think there's an evolution, like, and it's almost like brands on social are chasing the thing that worked, and then that thing has stopped working. Like, I'm sure you've got some brands like, yeah, they're all
Agreed.
moving at different paces. You might have some brands too that conventionally, like 8 years ago, were like, we were so good at clapbacks on Twitter, and you're like, well, that doesn't exist anymore. So now it's like
Perfect.
adjusting the tactic over and over and over again.
I mean, perfect. I mean, I've spoken about this so many times, and I'm really glad you mentioned it. But yeah, to go into the details a little bit, basically, I've been running social pages for 5 years, let's say. And what TikTok looked like 5 years ago to what it looks like now is very, very different.
Yeah.
It started with we did Arthur PBS, the kids' TV show Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
You know the fist meme, if you
Oh
ever
yeah.
heard of it. Got him to zero to
Mm-hmm.
400,000 followers in like 10 days. That was in 2021, 2022. Um, what worked was, I mean, no brands were on the platform. So if you were willing to be like slightly funny, it worked, and TikTok gave you the views.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, it led to some other work, most famously Lionsgate, which we've been leading since 2022, and Business Insider labeled us as one of the best brand accounts or top 10 brand accounts. Um, and what really was our bread and butter for so long was like memes and clipbles, you know, be willing to make a joke out of yourself and be funnier than any brand is willing to be. But I want to say 2024, we saw a difference, you know. It wasn't new, cool, and exciting for a brand to be on TikTok anymore. I think every brand realized it. They invested the money, say, hey, we have to be on TikTok. How do we do it? Um, and from my perspective, on my side, is like, hey, I'm really good at this. I want to stay ahead of the curve. Like, what's the next thing? How do we evolve that? And kind of what brought our conversation to start was I took a bet on fan edits.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2024 time, fan edits. I mean, if you're really online, you realize they weren't that good back then. You know, they were done with
Nope.
CapCut. It was heavy filters. They didn't look that great. Um, but in my mind, I kept seeing them on my feed, and I was like, I don't think this is another like format of like a meme or like a trend that is just going to come in and go out. I think this is a new genre of content.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I'm an editor first. I started making them myself. I was like, hey, let's see how we can cook. And they started doing rather well. And I was like, all right, I really want to scale this. I'm taking a bet
Yeah.
that this is a thing for a really, really long time. And we went out and to some editors. And as steps moved on, we built a decentralized network of fan editors across the world that were like deep fans of specific titles or specific genres. And we're really passionate about making really, really good videos. And from there, that really scaled. You know, we've been able to work with these fans and these fan editors to work across our clients. And one, it's you're bringing the person that cares about the product the most into the room, and they're
Yeah.
passionate about it and they're willing to build alongside all the tools and assets and resources that a brand and agency can provide. And it's ended up being really, really good. I say all this to say that we started with the clip polls and the memes and like, hey, this is what the platform is, this is what we have to do. And I think a lot of people grapple with that. You have to divorce your brand messaging and whatever you're trying to sell with the platform to make it live on the platform. But as we've seen the platform evolve, we think that TikTok rewards premium content. TikTok rewards a really, really good video. It doesn't really have to be like a meme or like super humorous anymore, which I think was what scared a lot of brands. But to summarize, I think a lot of people treat social media like a job.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that you can't with how quickly it moves. You really have to treat yourself like a creator on behalf of these brands to continue to adapt and to continue to scale what's coming next. Because, I mean, we have the current algorithm for, well, let's say another year, maybe. It's shifting every single day. But there
If we're
will be that
lucky.
next thing that you need to build and need to scale. It's really just about being online and being in love with these platforms to figure out kind of how we can build from there.
It's like I'll have multiple conversations on here about balance. I don't think that it necessarily lends to or suggests that you have to be terminally online. I think you just have to be perpetually curious.
Agreed.
You cannot have those moments where you're like, oh no, that one's not for me. You
Yeah.
have to at least be able to
Yeah.
like entertain it. To unpack a couple things I wanted to like go back on is like I think sometimes we look with hindsight or retrospect at like Arthur's a really good example, right? Never gotten to talk about it on the pod, but one of the things I think is interesting is at no point when that show's being created is it designed to be a meme.
Mm-hmm.
The gift and the art form is then finding something that will resonate. Because
Yep.
now if you ask somebody, they're like, yeah, it's the fist meme. Yeah, totally. But I would assume at the beginning it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What is the thing that I think that's the thing. It's like you can find things and reapplications of things that were not created for that. That it wasn't created with that in mind because that didn't exist when it was created. I think that's what's interesting about reinterpreting content.
I mean, for sure, I will push on the one thing you said where it's like you don't have to be terminally online. I think in a
I like the
sense you
pushback.
do. The way that I think about it is first you define it well. Like always curious is really what you
Mm-hmm.
have to do. But I think with the internet and all ecosystems, of the internet, whether it be Reddit, whether it be TikTok, whether it be Twitter, there's a language that is spoken across the board on the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
now, if you haven't been keeping up for the past 3, 4 years, it's really, really difficult to understand because I think even a few years ago, it was just a meme. It was just a singular meme that you had to
Yep.
understand. But now everything is a meme of a meme of a meme of a meme. And to explain any trend that you want to bring to life, you have to go down 4 years of layers on why it makes sense to the person. And if you are
Yeah.
not kind of in the know of what all those pieces are, it'll never make sense to you. So it
It's
makes it
lore.
really difficult to continue to translate that language of the internet. And I like to consider myself a dialect coach. As much as I'm translating, I'm teaching you how to speak it, and I'm making sure that you follow along with what the trends are. Um, but all this to say, I also think we've gone into a place where if you know the language of the internet enough, you don't have to follow the trends. You just have to be able to speak the language, and people
Mm-hmm.
understand. And you can kind of start your own movements and moments from there.
It's kind of like I like the pushback, and I agree with you saying.
Yeah,
It's like I try to like not scare the living hell. I work with college students too, and I'm like I try not to scare them to being like you're gonna be sleeping on a cot, you're gonna be like
yeah,
your eyes are gonna be bloodshot, and you're just like I'm like no, I mean you're gonna find a system like anybody else, but I think when you think about it, like it's lore, it's translation,
yeah,
it's knowing like what those things are that entail like especially when I talk to people who work in like experiential,
yeah,
and like they do a pop up for a movie or a TV show, like it, they're not doing set design and then saying screw it. Like they have to know that show or that movie.
exactly,
Like you have to know all that stuff backwards and forwards. So the same thing is true with the internet. Like you have to know what people are talking about, and then probably also just a full callback to the beginning of be like realize when like okay this isn't my expertise, let's
for
call
sure.
let's call in a friend on that.
Yeah, for sure. Because even like with the overall language of the internet, I mean, if I go into a cat's eye fan Discord, I'm not going to be understanding what they're referencing. They could be referencing a performance or a moment that came out of a performance or the way that two band members had dialogue with each other and how it created this moment. I'm not going to understand that. So they have the internet language on top of the niche language. Whereas like you're always going to have fine pockets that you don't understand. But I do think it takes a basic understanding or even an in-depth understanding of what the entire language looks like, and it's always moving and it's so many different parts. But and that's where kind of Gen Z has a slight advantage is I think a lot of things like what a millennial would think a Gen Z is chronically online, a Gen Z is just like, oh no, that's just normal regular internet presence.
That's
Where the metric and the standard for what chronically online means will always change person to person.
I'm going to try and land the plane on this. I will make an analogy in hopefully less than 30 seconds. But Gen X and
Mhm.
Millennial have this acute knowledge of stuff that existed before them. So they can call upon like shows and movies and pop culture from the
For
60s,
sure.
70s, and 80s. And a lot of that is due to the rise of cable television. And because they had cable television, which somehow needed to go from 0 to 24 hours, it bought a bunch of this old content from the 60s and 70s and 80s. So I think the thing that Gen X and millennials have a problem with is that they have this hard time understanding like, oh, why don't you know all the things that came before you? And I would argue like if
For
you're Gen
sure.
Z and Gen Alpha, you only have you will never be able to consume all of the content that is current and available for you in a lifetime. So you can only focus on the here and now. So it changes all of your tactics because you're not going off of nostalgia because they don't have it. It's just right
Yep.
here.
I mean, it's the perfect analogy, and to extend on it, I think not only is it impossible, it would be irresponsible to go out and search other content because like our attention is only so valuable, and
I
you
love
can
that.
only see so many things. So it's like people flag Gen Z. Oh my god, they can't pay attention to anything. But like I've been watched TikTok series for like 3 hours. Like no, it's just because it's irresponsible to give my attention to something that is not hyper entertaining because
Yeah.
there's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah, well, and again too, it's like that's the thing, patterns change, right? We can get really stuck in or familiar with, oh well, generally, this is like, and again, nostalgia will be born out of things. There will eventually be things that we look back on in 2025, 26, and we'll
For
go,
sure,
oh, we're nostalgic for that. You just
100%.
don't know that in the moment. But yeah, I mean, I think once people can kind of wrap their head around that and have some like empathy and be like, oh, okay, so what you're consuming is totally different than what I'm consuming. It's going to lend to different things. I think sometimes the biggest barriers that I see, like just working with organizations, is like the biggest one is always like, is it trackable? What's
For
the
sure.
data? And you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, we'll get there. But also, if we make it so trackable, that's the parable, right? It's always like, yeah,
Yeah.
but if you make it so trackable and then it's void of interest, it's like, it's like, again, empathetically, I'm like, I know to get these things made, I do need to give you something. I can't just be like, trust me, like I
Agreed.
understand, but how do you kind of find balance with that?
I mean, it's a difficult question,
Yeah.
and nothing we for sure answered. I mean, my realm of the world is I don't like you can't
Yeah.
with the videos that I work everything organic. You can't point directly saying like, hey, this video equaled X amount of people to buy the product or buy tickets to the movie and get butt in seats. If I have to answer the question specifically, the metric that we often look for as job well done,
Hmm.
we're probably earning towards our goal or leaning towards it is many times over now, we've been able to build a moment where fans will go out and make a video on their own personal pages
Hmm.
saying, congratulations, this is such a good job, or oh my God, did you guys see what this brand is doing? Did you guys see what Lionsgate is doing? And in our minds, when we see that, understanding the culture of the internet, understanding what it takes for a 17 and 18-year-old to go out and make a TikTok video, which I think we all understand. You have to get that past that moment of cringe. You have to get past that moment of, oh my God, everyone's going to hate seeing this. Oh my God, this is going to flop. And it's a very
Yeah.
difficult process internally to go out and make a video, no matter what it is. Um, and if we're able to get even one person to do that, to say, hey, we did this brand video and they're congratulating that, in our minds, making that video is 10x more difficult than buying the product or buying a ticket because you have to have that internal battle and that internal conflict. So technically speaking, if you're looking for a metric that we look for, that's kind of what we do, and that's specifically what we look for. But all in all, like I think many people are in the world of like, hey, we're building cultural affinity and we're building moments, and I'll always reference back that the Lionsgate account is we have fans that are saying like, hey, like drop what you're doing. Lionsgate just dropped a video, and I think that matters a lot more in terms of the entire ecosystem of the internet, of kind of the dialogue and the narrative that you are building around your brand. And that is going to be the long game and continuous work to know that, hey, what you are posting, people are going to be looking out for. And it starts with views for sure. I think my word is always, Jim Carrey said, I hope everyone makes money. So they realize like it's not all that you need. There's so many more shit that you did. And to kind of make it simplify or dumb that down is like, I hope everyone figures out how to get views
Hmm.
and numbers, because you realize it's easier than you can. And you kind of have to build moments and narrative and dialogue with your fans beyond that. And I think that's what we really work for, and that's what we really like are looking to track the metrics. So all in all, like yeah, views very important. The video is really the number one thing that we look for, saying like, hey, we did a job well done. Fans are creating around us. And then two, it's kind of just,
Yeah.
or three, it's always just feeding into that dialogue, always feeding into that narrative on how can we build a moment bigger than just one video.
I didn't want to skip past, like I wanted to come back to the fan edits because I think it's in
Mm-hmm.
line with depth. Depth is required to engage people right now because again, if there's so many things coming at you, it's the thing that you're engaging with some level of depth that's going to keep and maintain your attention. I think that is so smart. And if you look at certain things that tend to break through, it's because there is an engaged fandom that's getting to create and
For
getting
sure.
to have depth. Again, like the best way to get someone to be a fan for life is like give them the tools and get them engaged and allow them to like whatever their passion is leading them toward, like facilitate that.
Agreed. Yeah.
The other thing too is I think you're saying it and you're very mindful of it. It's like especially in movies, and this is true for a lot of things, but I think movies is it's acute. um, we are in an era where like it's assumed that you are going to, it's not an appointment of like, oh, it's a Friday at 7, you will see me at the movie theater, but it's clearly shown that like you can market the hell out of a movie and you can create moments and you can do these wonderful and amazing things. It's just that it requires a different level of depth because it means that you can't just assume they're going to go, you have to give them a reason to go, and that changes your tactic.
Yeah. Agree. And I think two things here is one, making content for a brand, and that's my world. I make content for brands.
Mm-hmm.
Is the second piece of foundation that I always work off of is you're not supposed to be there. You are the parent in the room. You are
Mm-hmm.
the chaperone at the dance. You are quite obviously not exactly what is the platform is meant for,
Mm-hmm.
and every single piece of content you put out has to fight that obstacle. Is, hey,
Great.
how can I show up authentically in these groups? How can I show up and beat the fact that I'm not supposed to be in these rooms by being the cool dad, by being the chaperone that's dancing and kind of showing up in these rooms as I should? Because at the same time, it's like I use TikTok as a consumer. I know how to do this. So how do we make
Mm-hmm.
sure that those brands are showing up in the same ways? And what that's evolved to now, and to your points that you were saying before, is we really want to make the end user, the end audience, feel something.
Yeah.
The same way that movies are meant to make somebody feel something. The reason why you watch a movie is they take you out of reality. You go into a space where you are feeling emotions and being taken out of your own body to just experience this art. And I think more and more with the platform, we are able to lean into those emotions and lean into just making the audience feel something special. Which is really why I've loved these fan edits as a thing, because it just feels much closer to art than it ever did with TikTok. And I think that's what a lot of brands and filmmakers kind of had troubles with, is like, hey, this is not what it's meant to be. But in a sense, you do have to take things away from what it's meant to be. But this feels so special in the fact that we are able to kind of get the reception saying like, hey, this video made me cry,
Yeah.
which can be very difficult for any piece of art to do, but it just feels very special that we're able to do and elicit those different emotions over and over and over again. And it really is what makes the work special, what I think has evolved the work into kind of being something completely new on social media.